there was like a fear of women empowerment, and they deem them as
Hmm.
witches and even go as far as killing them.
Yeah, just to try and take that power away. So we saw it like throughout history, if there's any time like a woman, they were typically like healers, or they knew about herbs that were helpful, or they were just very intuitive, or just like a teacher in their community. Like all of those things that they were doing were seen as like bad and evil because it was giving them power. And I think the systems that were in place wanted to take that away. And I think that speaks a lot to where we're at today as well. Like if we look at the way politics are leaning and the different rights being taken away from different groups and individuals, I think it it's just as much a worry now as it was then, in a sense.
Today on the show, we are joined with the wonderful Laura Hokstad. Laura is featured in a brand new documentary titled Coven. It follows her journey of becoming a witch. That film and this conversation we have today is going to explain to you exactly what a modern day witch is. And for myself, this was such a fun learning experience. And also, throughout this episode, we dive into really deep subjects that I don't often get to touch on when recording these. The film Coven is having its world premiere in Toronto at Hot Docs on April 28th. That is this Friday if you're recently listening to this episode. And also screening again on May 5th. Also around the film, Laura works for the official Rue Morgue YouTube channel, where she's got her own segment where she reads tarot cards and talks horror and a lot of fun shit like that. If you're not already subscribed to that channel, do it and check out her segments. As you're going to hear in this interview, she's a great vibe, and what I love the most about this talk is how we initially dive into her journey of becoming a witch, but then it just turns into this beautiful conversation of life, connectivity, human energy, and a lot of awesome stuff. But I can keep going on and explaining it, but why don't you meet Laura right now? Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
No problem. Thank you
Yeah,
for talking with me.
yeah. I ended up watching the documentary Coven yesterday, and it was really cool.
Okay.
It was cool. Like in our chat, I don't want to ruin too many of the story beats. I stress people to go see it themselves, but maybe I just kind of want to like pick your brain about what it's like to be like, I guess, a witch in this millennium. It's kind of like this ancient practice of just connectivity and a lot of things like that. And yeah, I just kind of want to know a little bit about you now and your experience through this practice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like when I started, and I still consider myself very like novice, very new. There's just so much to learn and uncover, and different paths you can kind of go down, in terms of learning about witchcraft and which practice is right for you. So, yeah, when I started, I was just very kind of like very solitary. I was like very much on my own, just doing what I discovered, kind of worked for me. But through this film and through this experience, I've learned about a lot of different practices, and I think that a big thing about modern day witchcraft is, and I think it happens. You see this in the movie, is this like reclaiming of power, and I think that whatever way somebody is drawn to witchcraft, if that helps them feel empowered, then I think that's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it's really cool. And even I find lots of people may not have a full understanding of what it is, just based on, I guess, what the media portrays, movies portrays, and even historically. And it's kind of interesting to see throughout the documentary, just learning about that through maybe like the teachers you met along the way, and how
Yes.
just it's almost was there was like a fear of women empowerment, and they deem them as
Mm-hmm.
witches and even go as far as killing them as and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, just to try and take that power away. So we saw it like throughout history, if there's anytime like a woman, they were typically like healers, or they knew about herbs that were helpful, or they were just very intuitive, or just like a teacher in their community, like all of those things that they were doing were seen as like bad and evil because it was giving them power. And I think the systems that were in place wanted to take that away. And I think that speaks a lot to where we're at today as well. Like if we look at the way politics are leaning and the different rights being taken away from different groups and individuals, I think it's just as much a worry now as it was then, in a sense.
Yeah, and even I didn't expect this, but I just did an episode yesterday on Olympic athletes and mainly women, and like a lot of like corruption and power and just wrongfulness going on with
Yeah,
them. And even like even the one movie's about sports I watched and the other one's about witches. I didn't expect them to kind of connect in a way where it made my
yeah,
mind open that even though I always think today we are very progressive, but in ways
yeah.
a lot of people in power are not, and still
Hmm. Hmm.
treating women terribly and beyond that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, even before I knew about the different types of practices for witchcraft, I say it in the documentary as well that I think politically I like to identify as a witch, almost just because of that term and how much power it wields and how off-putting it can be for people who don't understand. It's like, wait, what?
Mhm.
Why would you want to be that? That thing historically has been seen as evil and this and that, but it's just like a woman in power, and people didn't like that. So it's easier to call her a witch and take that away than, you know,
Yeah,
to
for
let her
sure.
be.
It's
Yeah.
like kind of being an empowered woman plus a fuck you. I'm gonna like
Yeah.
just
Exactly. Like,
to
you
the
better
next
watch out.
level.
You might also get cursed. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. And even
yeah.
what I loved in the film, like it really shows like kind of like your beginning of like curiosity. And I think it's interesting you talking about growing up and always feeling like you had some type of connectivity,
Hmm.
whether it's to the earth and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
just I just want to get your perspective, like how did it feel to just kind of explore deeper into that? Because and to the point where a camera's following you now and
Yeah.
you're meeting like this real covens and stuff like that. It's great, it's awesome.
Yeah. It was definitely amazing. It was surreal. It through the process I was making connections, like when I'm having that conversation with Andra, I'm like, wait, like I did do this as a kid, and now that I'm learning, I'm seeing what those activities were and how I can connect them to who I am now. And um and then definitely it was interesting learning from a bunch of different women and how they practice witchcraft in their own way, some very strict ceremonial ways, as you'll see in the film, and then others who are a bit more casual about it and just kind of don't want it to be so structured because they want it to be more organic and in like the way that you feel comfortable. And I think I really like that. I think I tend to steer away from anything that's too structured in that way, be it like, I mean, that's why I wouldn't have considered myself a religious person beforehand. So anything that felt too much like restricting in that way, I kind of, I didn't really connect with as much as more of the natural, like being connected to the earth and just doing these things for yourself that feel empowering and feel, uh, I guess, keep you in the moment and mindful.
Yeah, I really relate to that that sense of
Hmm.
just in life, just kind of going with the flow, you know, and what feels
Hmm. Hmm.
natural and like self growth. And speaking of like, you kind of went on this journey for self growth. I don't
Hmm.
know how
Hmm.
long it's been since the end of that movie, but are you still like practicing learning more? And do you feel like your connectivity to the earth or whatever you were looking for is getting stronger?
Yeah, I feel like now, I mean, my practice hasn't changed too much in that I still kind of tend to do it for myself. But I feel a lot more confident in it now because of what I learned throughout the process of filming the documentary. I think before I was like, I didn't really want to call myself a witch as confidently. I was just like, maybe I'll tell my friends, but I didn't want to, feel like I can say it out to the world. And now I really feel like very confident standing in that. And yeah, I think the documentary helped me with that because it was just learning about my past and different traditions just kind of helped me.
Yeah, like yeah, I think one of the coolest thing was like it does follow three different stories, but with your
Hmm.
story arc, kind of digging into your past. And again, I'm not trying to spoil the movie or whatever, but there's some mind-blowing stuff about your history that also directly connects to witches, which you didn't know until you started
I
diving into
didn't. Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to spoil it either. I mean, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I wish I could talk about it, but
that.
just yeah, there were so many moments where I made these connections that explained why I was the way I was or why I was doing the things I was doing. And it just was really validating. And I think that also helped me kind of just sit more confidently in this place where I'm at now, in terms of my practice and everything like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. Even like I'm a strong believer in certain energies and stuff, even though I
Hmm.
don't openly talk about it too. And I'm sure people who have followed this series too, usually I'm talking to comedians or different artists too, and we don't really go down this rabbit hole, but I find sometimes um I don't know. I feel vulnerable talking about this, which is fun as well. But I
Yeah.
find sometimes if you just listen to the universe, which I don't always do, it almost like does this serendipitous thing or where it
Hmm.
almost brings you to a point where you're meant to be, which I also think is so interesting in your story, where growing
Hmm.
up, you always felt like this, you were always drawn to this. And then finally,
Hmm.
you kind of just open up and let go and talk to this historian, go to Scotland and blah, 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 and then have
Yeah.
a direct connection to something you felt like as a
Yeah.
child is
Hmm.
so interesting. And even talking about, I'm getting goosebumps right
Same,
now,
same.
you know.
It's true. It was like the connections that were made were just each one. I was just like, wait, what? Like, it's hard for me to explain in any intelligent way. It was just
Yeah.
an incredible experience, and yeah, just totally validating and totally just like things happen in a certain way for a certain reason, and it kind of really made me believe in that more so.
Yeah. One thing I thought was cool about the film too, which is I kind of mentioned at the beginning where like historically people think of witches as these evil beings and things like that. But
Yeah.
every story arc, I just noticed that everybody who was into and wanting to further pursue being a witch or already are a witch all had good intentions of
Hmm.
being a human being. And again, like
Hmm.
I'll just keep using the word connectivity to like whether it's the earth, their soul,
Hmm.
their past. And it just
Yeah.
felt like just a very pure way of living and having a mindset and everything.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think I think it's great that each one of the stories that go throughout this documentary kind of touch on that. And I think there's one section where they were talking about how this like stereotypes of witches and why they were described as evil and everything. It was to control and to get people to keep people away from that way of thinking and that way of operating in the world. And so I think it's like kind of why are those the stereotypes, why is that the working narrative that it's evil and it's bad, and then when you actually look into it you're like, oh, it's actually quite a bit more communal and connected and pure than you're led to believe.
Hmm. And you identifying as a witch, do you feel like you consistently have to explain this to people when they hear about it, or if you tell them, or anything
I
like
think
that?
it just I think it just depends on the crowd.
Hmm.
I've definitely maybe gone to a like an event where there's maybe people I didn't know and it comes up, and I've had some people be really off put, like, well, why would you say that, like why would you want to say that, like don't you know that that's evil and everything, and I'm like, well, that's not necessarily how I see it, and I know my practice isn't evil, and I know I'm not an evil person and my intentions aren't. So it can sometimes be a good way to educate people. I mean, it depends on how much they feel comfortable talking about it.
Yeah,
Um, but I'm always open to it.
yeah, yeah. It's cool and very interesting. And even I find in different ways, like I listen to all types of music across the board, and one genre I love is death and black metal, just because
Yes.
it's so fun. And it's interesting. Like I hear interviews of these guys, and you might see them in a poster, see them live, and it's like they look like the literal devil, and it's like there's just goat horns everywhere. And
Yeah.
then you hear them in like an interview, and they're just very soft spoken,
Yes.
friendly people. And one person I'm thinking of, he's the singer of Behemoth, and he
Okay.
uses
Yeah.
this type of imagery not because he believes in it or whatever. He just wants people to just kind of open their mind about maybe
Hmm.
religious corruption or whatever,
Hmm.
but it's almost just the most extreme way of doing it as
Yes.
an artist in a way.
Yes,
And I think that's so
absolutely.
cool. And I feel like kind of, I guess, in my opinion, maybe labeling yourself as a witch kind of has that certain spirit to it, it's kind of fun in a way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that it's like taking a strong stance. Using that word, it can be very divisive to certain people. And I think if it opens up a bigger conversation, then I think that's good. And if it makes people, because if people meet me, they're like, "Oh, Laura's not, evil or scary," and then I'm like, "Yeah, so here you've met a witch who isn't either of those things."
Yeah. Yeah, and this is fun. Like I was totally excited to talk to you today. Even before I watched the documentary, I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's talk to a witch. Let's go."
Yes.
But it's great to even get like myself like a further education on it too, because even
Hmm.
with my excitement, I feel like there was part of like, I guess, an ignorance or whatever. It's like, oh, this spooky lady might be on my Zoom call or whatever.
I
But again,
know.
it's cool to kind of like just share with people what it really is, and
Hmm.
what you ladies are
Hmm.
doing, and like your intentions
Hmm.
behind everything.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, I think, it like there are different practices, there's different levels of witchcraft that you can get into. And I think some may seem darker or if they're larger rituals, but I think for myself it's just finding what was comfortable for me. And if that's just like being by myself and doing like, finding herbs and crystals that are meaningful to me and I believe hold power, and then using them in a way that makes me feel, like I said, mindful. I think that's a big part of it. So I feel like anyone can, find witchcraft in their own practices if they're looking for it.
Yeah, definitely. And it also seems like this has been a journey of just even like self-growth, of embracing who you are, which I find really inspiring too, because I find
Hmm.
I guess like you mentioned in the film, like you grew up, you were being bullied and stuff. And even like I
Hmm.
find I meet a lot of people, and myself even at an earlier age, where I wasn't embracing my true self, and it was
Hmm.
almost just due to factors around me of thinking I should be this certain way as a human. And there's like different influences, even though like my intentions of who I am
Hmm.
weren't bad, just being different felt off. And I think your story is beautiful, because you're just very like leaning into what's in on the inside and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely where I find my practice has drawn me. It's just more looking inward and working through all of that, because like I always joke and I'm like, I feel like I was most myself, or I knew exactly who I was like right before I got bullied, because I was just like this like goth kid who was like witchy, and like I was just discovering myself. And then I think that really kind of halted that for a little while, and I had to put
Mm.
that me on a shelf um for a while. And then I feel like with witchcraft and identifying as a witch is so closely knit in my experience to my queerness, because I was bullied. And like I say in the documentary, the rumors about me was that, oh, she's a lesbian and a witch. And at the time in the, late 90s, it wasn't as power or as empowering, or I just felt very like separate from everyone else if that was the rumor about me. And I just hate now that, years later, I'm like, well, they were right. Like, not
Yeah,
always,
yeah.
but these bullies specifically happened to see something I didn't. And I kind of hate that.
Yeah, it's but
Mhm.
yeah, it is kind of like interesting how like you could kind of know who you are when you're a kid, and like kids
Mhm.
are like unapologetic and just free,
Yes,
and then as you like hit those teen years and
it
some
just,
one person could say something, they'll question your entire existence, and like when
yes,
really you were like kind of on your true path, I guess you went through
exactly.
like kind of a bump in the road of
Hmm.
just mentally of influences around you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then to just finally come back to it and realize, like you said, like, yeah, when you're at that age, you kind of, yeah, know exactly who you are and you're free and you're just like, it doesn't matter what other people think. And I think getting back there and just doing that work and sitting in that place and being like, okay, I'm who I want to be, I'm who I should be, is
Yeah,
really powerful. And that,
it's so interesting. Even I'm kind of thinking it's about my journey too. And when I was a little kid, I
yeah,
used to just religiously like watch much music and just love
yeah,
interviews. And when I was getting older and like going to college, I was taking like all these courses because I thought I was supposed to do something like with a structure of the way the world wants you, and like
yeah.
this is going to pay my bills and have a family or whatever. And then all of a sudden I hit my 30s and I'm just like, I'm not happy. And then all of a sudden I got a podcast and a microphone. And I'm talking to witches and David Suzuki, and it's
This
awesome,
is
you know?
beautiful. That is
Yeah.
amazing.
And it all comes
Yeah,
from almost just like kind of remembering just like what's in your soul and just letting go.
yeah.
And then this is where I think the some unexplainable energies start happening where they put opportunities in front of me, because I don't know if you feel the same way, but as soon as I let go, things that I would dream of started coming to me, like
Mhm,
in the
mhm.
weirdest ways. It's almost like I don't want to talk too much about myself because this episode's
No,
about
that's
you,
okay.
but it's almost like spooky and unexplainable, and it's some people could say things are coincidence, but there's been too many of them, you know? It's like
Mhm.
almost like
Yeah,
a meant to be thing.
exactly, and it is totally about when that moment where you finally, like, let go, and then it just, kind of you welcome those opportunities in, I think. I
Hmm.
think for myself, just when you were a kid, you watch much music all the time. When I was a kid, I just loved, watching movies, mostly scary movies, and I
Hmm.
loved, like even as a kid, like analyzing them, I guess. So in my head, I was like, oh, I wish that could be a job, but then I didn't think it could be. And then now, years later, I can combine two things that I love, which is tarot reading, which is very attached to my witchcraft practice, and horror movies. And I have a YouTube show where I talk about the use of tarot cards in horror movies. And it's like, if I would have
Oh,
told 13-year-old me that you could do that and you can be exactly who you are, like, I just think that's pretty special.
yeah, that's
And
cool. It sounds
yeah.
like everything kind of
Mhm.
combining for you too
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
very
yeah,
like natural and authentic way. What's your
yeah.
channel called?
Well, I do it through Rue Morgue TV. Rue Morgue's the horror magazine that's based in Toronto. It's Canada's largest. And on their channel, I have a section called Tarot Tarot, where I look at tarot cards and horror movies. It's like
That's
I just nerd out for like 20 minutes about it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Especially yeah, I
Mhm.
guess I didn't know you're like signed with Rue Morgue too, which I'm familiar with too, but like
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
that's
I
I guess
started out just volunteering with them, and then I pitched them the idea, and they're like, "Sure."
yeah, that's usually the way it goes too. And I
Yeah.
find places who do that kind of content too, they can obviously see the passion and
Mhm.
authenticity with you too. And it's
Yeah.
that's so cool.
But yeah, I think like if you and I sat down with like our 13-year-old selves, they'd probably be pretty stoked like as to where we are now.
Somebody recently just said that like to me on a day I was like very like stressed, and it was like about
Mhm.
I guess like I was kind of stressed of like too many things I want to happen happening at once, but I couldn't like juggle them all. And
Okay.
somebody just told me that, oh yeah, think of like maybe like 10 years ago when you were in college. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a problem I want to have type of thing.
Right.
And just kind of relax my shoulders. Is like, yeah, bring it in, like stuff like, but I think it's easy to get too much in your own head as well
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
On your journey, did you ever like second guess yourself, like maybe going into having this documentary made and stuff? Because this is like an all-in commitment. What were kind of like the process leading up to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was, I just imposter syndrome like is abound. I think I was like, oh, maybe I'm not as like I'm not into witchcraft as much as they need me to be, or like is my
Mhm.
story like, am I going to find something like, what if I don't like it, or like, what if I meet these witches and they're like, oh, she's a fake, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it
Yeah.
was very intimidating to meet some women who have really dedicated their whole lives to their practice and their ritual practice and everything. Like Anne Marie was a very intense person to meet. She has a lot of knowledge and is very like strict in the way in which she does her practice. So I think I was just like, this woman is so powerful. She's gonna look at me and be like, get out. Like I think there was like a bit of that. But I think it was through meeting a bunch of different people. Like later I met Sandra, another practicing witch, and another woman named Monica. And they really kind of like helped me be like comfortable with where I'm at, and that's still valid, and if I'm searching for this, it must be for a reason, and to
Mm.
not think that I don't belong. And I think that kind of, if I'm going to psychoanalyze myself, goes back to how I was always afraid that I didn't belong when I was in high school, and like coming out as a queer woman as well as exploring witchcraft, it was like maybe I'm not enough, maybe I'm not meant to do this. But I think through this process, sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional about it, but I think through this process, I got to a point where I'm happy to stand like confidently in both of those identities.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing. And even I think all the stories in this film was cool because you mentioned there's like different kinds of like, I guess, the high witch. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the name of
Yeah.
them, like the high priestess or like
Yes.
whatever they are.
Yeah.
And yeah, that first one you met was very intimidating and very
Yes.
intense. But
Yeah.
as the movie went along, and not just in your story, in the other girls' stories, you see that there's different ways of practicing, and
Hmm.
maybe you all have the same core belief. And it's just such
Hmm.
an interesting world I got to look in, and I think it's
Yeah.
it's so cool. And like I really appreciate you just kind of letting go and sharing your story, because I'm sure that's such a
Yeah.
vulnerable thing to do too.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I think, I think it got easier as it went along because I got more comfortable with Rama and the crew, and I was able to trust them that like where we're going with this and the research I'm uncovering, like it started to feel more natural, and it really picked up steam. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm in this now and I have to know more, and like let's just keep going.
Hmm.
And then yeah, eventually you kind of just kind of forget that the cameras are there.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's I guess like the key to it, to like a good documentary, which I gotta be
Yeah.
incredibly hard. Like I couldn't imagine. I'd
Yeah.
always be like looking into it, and like I think I would change as a person. Did it take you a
Mhm.
little bit to adjust, or
Definitely. I think there's like a few days of like interviews and stuff at the very beginning where I was very like stiff, and I would just, after I'd say something, I'm like, oh, I don't think that's really what I meant, and I would kind of go back and forth. But what really helped is there's a few days where my sister, she's like literally my best friend in the whole world, she was with me, and then I was able to just be like exactly myself, and then that kind of helped to go on from there. So I think it was harder to do it by myself at first, I guess, to relax and trust that I can be myself, like let that guard down.
Mhm. Yeah. And there was like a lot shown like on the camera too, but I know like all these different witches you would meet would talk about their practices like outside the film. Have you done any like rituals with them like and everything on your journey?
N- Not with the women that I met in the film, but after experiencing a few different types of rituals, I felt like more confident to do it with there's one of my friends in that I Zoom with in the film. Her name's Skyra, and her and I have really kind of stepped up, I guess, stepped up our ritual game, if you will, after the film, just because I was able to see like, I learned a lot from them about like herbs. Like I didn't even know anything about herbs, and I still feel like I don't know much, but ways to use those mindfully in ritual. Just I feel like I got a bit more confident. Still, total novice in
Yeah.
that
Oh, but
regard, but
it's
it
still
definitely
so
taught
cool
me.
that yeah, that you're
Mhm.
learning all this too, because it's like I'm totally interested in I don't know, it's just like I always feel like there's more layers to this world than that's on the surface. And
Mhm.
there's so many examples in life where it's almost like I have these unexplainable moments which just dealing with energy telling me something before it happens, and I'm
Yes.
always curious but I don't explore it enough too. So
Mhm.
even just like watching this film and like talking to you right now, it's just kind of I don't know, again giving me a little goosebumps of
Yeah.
stuff I guess bury because I feel vulnerable talking about it, you know? It's more like
Mhm.
I'm shy to really lean into it. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I feel like I've seen some shit though, like,
Yeah.
that's like
Yes.
undeniable, which makes me have that stance, you know?
Exactly. And I think the not the fear, but the apprehension to really lean into it kind of comes from a place of like, I don't know if I like open that gate, what's going to come flooding in. So I think when we get those moments where it's like our intuition goes or something just happens serendipitously, if we're not comfortable with following that thread deeper, then we might just stop it there. But I think we all have this ability because we are all connected to, trust our intuition and really feel things. But I think
Mhm.
it's just a spectrum of like how open someone is to that. And I think you can get more comfortable with it, and then I think you'll start to notice even more. It's like the floodgates will open, and then you'll be like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. Do you feel
Sorry.
like, it's all good, you can swear on here. Do you
Okay.
feel like leaning into it for you has opened it even more than at the beginning of your journey?
Yeah, definitely. And I think back, like years before, I had gone to a tarot card reader, and well, doing my cards, had said something. She's like, I feel like your third eye is closed and it's like clouded, like a baby deer when they're first born and they open their eyes, but it's blurry. And that image
Mm.
really stuck with me. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I feel like through this process, I feel like that I, in a metaphorical sense, has gotten more like the vision has gotten clearer, and I feel like I've been more comfortable to open it and to be okay with what that brings in. If that
Yeah.
doesn't sound too wild.
Yeah, I kind of love it, and there's something I always like want to mention, but I feel so shy like talking about it. But in my past, like I've always like seen like the number pattern like pop up 333,
Hmm.
and it's
Hmm.
always like when I'm going through a drastic change in life, and I haven't seen it in a very, very, very long time. And this is so spooky because this is like happened yesterday after I watched the film, and I don't know if it's because I'm just was thinking of this kind of stuff, but around this, okay, I gotta kind of like preset this too. I've been feeling like
Okay.
heavy weights of stress, like I need to make some changes as well. And so
Okay.
I there's two things that are so fucking spooky from this. So I
Tell
wake
me.
up last night and I look at the clock and it's 333, and I'm like, okay, so that's my brain again, like my vulnerability of brain is like, oh yeah, this is a coincidence, whatever. I go back to sleep and I'm still feeling like this weight of stress and stuff. I wake up again and I open my phone and I check my email. Let's see if the number's still there. But oh, it's okay. So my email number said 3,333. Right now it's at 3,340. But
Okay, but
this
still.
morning it was all threes. And then I'm like, yo, what the fuck? It's back, because it
Yes.
hasn't happened in years. And then
Yeah.
so I'm still got this heavy, heavy stress. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna sleep for a moment and just relax. Like my mind was so busy. So I fall
Hmm.
asleep and I have this dream of a friend of mine who passed away this year. And he's a very
Oh,
strong presence. He was a legendary rapper in Canada named Pat Stay, and I filmed him for like a decade. And he tragically got murdered this year. And
oh,
it's again, he's just like a strong,
I'm so
like
sorry.
strong presence. And he showed up in my dream, and I wish I can remember. Like, I'm bad at remembering dreams. All I
Hmm.
knew is that he showed up and how I felt when I woke up, but it was
Wow.
like he was in my dream and was just like, yo, all this is bullshit, like, just. And I
Yeah.
woke up for no reason feeling like a rush of just, the weight was off my shoulder, I was happy. And then
Oh my God. I
and
have
then
goosebumps now.
so this is, I feel insane like saying this out loud,
No.
but I even to get your perspective, do you
Yeah,
think that was him
absolutely.
or my subconscious just
I'm,
making
I
him
mean, I
come
think
as a
like,
vision?
yeah, I mean, I feel like energies never go away. And especially if somebody's close to us, we keep their energy very close to us. And I think that when you were already getting these little hints from the universe, in a sense, that you're already very hyper aware of 333, it was almost like a, hey, just pay attention, something's coming, something's coming. And then for that to happen in your dream, I think whether it was him reaching out from, the other side, or just something you needed, his energy is what helped you kind of let go of that stress. Like you almost like embodied his energy, I think, in a sense, in your dream. You needed that. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
so
that I
interesting.
mean, either way, it's his impression and his presence is what helped you through that. So like I think whether it was him from beyond or just your energy, the way you hold him in you, in your subconscious, I think either way, it just kind of, yeah, it's
Yeah,
very interesting that you would see that
cool.
or you would experience that after.
Yeah, even the energy I felt, it didn't feel like mine, but he was always like a big
Hmm.
presence. He was just like almost a legend, and just funny and
Yeah.
stuff. And I just shot out of bed, just like, oh yeah, like soup, like I'm not confident at all. Like I'm just like, oh, today's gonna be a fucking great day, type of thing. And
Yes.
yeah, it's just thanks for listening to that too as well. It's also
Absolutely.
convenient that you're on today too, and
Yes.
somebody safe I can talk about this too. Like so.
Yes, absolutely. And I'd say afterwards, I would, if you feel like it, look up what 333 means. Like you can just Google it. There's certain numbers, they're called angel numbers, but I mean, that could just be whatever your belief system is. But there's
Mhm.
certain ones that people see regularly, and it's not everyone. So, and certain numbers mean certain things. So I don't know off the top of my head the significance of 333, but I'd urge you to check in, look into that and see what they represent when we see them.
Yeah, I think I will. I remember back in the day when it was happening a lot. I looked into it,
Mhm.
but I didn't really retain it. And I think I
Right,
heard
because you
like
weren't
different.
ready.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't ready. And I also
Hmm.
remember there was different meanings. Like, you Google, it could be anything could pop up.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
the problem with Google, and like people will do like, oh, top 10 numbers people see all the time. It's like, what's your source? Like, how do you know that?
Yeah,
But you can
exactly.
even look back into like even numerology. Like three is a very powerful number. Like if you think of like a triangle or any structures that has three sides, it's like very strong. So I think if the definition you're looking into has something to do with that, then you might be on the right track to like a good definition.
Hmm.
I can't really say what everybody online is like impressions of that number is, but if it's tied to an actual recorded belief system like numerology or something, then I think it'll be more accurate.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Hmm.
Thanks for listening to that
Hmm.
story too, by the
Of
way.
course. Thank you for sharing
I
it with
always
me.
I always like to make these shows about my guests, and I'm like, yo, I'm talking a lot right now.
It's okay. I love it. I love to hear it. And I love to talk about those things. And I feel like I'm glad that, the film's out now and I can have those conversations again, because outside of like my best friend and my partner, like they're like, okay, we've done enough spooky conversating today, Laura. Like, let's talk about something else. And I'm like, no, but I want to keep talking about it. So
Yeah.
I'm really relishing
Yeah, you
it.
feel like you're just warming up. And I'm sure like even what's cool about you putting yourself out there like this, it's gonna bring that people like
Hmm.
myself, like
Hmm.
this is the first time I met you, and then all of a sudden it's like, like I feel like I can just tell you this, where a lot of
Yes, yes.
again, why I feel vulnerable about it is because I don't have a lot of these conversations with people in my life, which I think is
Hmm.
super cool. And I guess
Yeah,
like I don't know, a gift you
yeah.
have to just I guess
Oh,
make
well,
people
thank
feel
you.
relaxed and just know that they're not they don't have to feel vulnerable talking to you about these things, or even knowing that you have taken this dive on your journey could inspire them to want to do the same as well.
Yes, yeah, I really hope it does. And I hope that if people watch this documentary, that they can start having those conversations, like opening up, maybe making connections for themselves and be like, oh, okay. Well, if that happened to her, that strikes a memory in me. Like us talking, you're like, oh, this brings up the 333 thing. And I think that's
Hmm.
really good, because I think there's all these little moments of like magic almost in our own day-to-day lives that maybe for the most part we ignore, because we're
Yeah.
kind of told that that's you know, whatever, it's not real, or we just have to ignore it and we just get stuck in this grind of everyday life. So if we all can, like, not to be cheesy, but like take a moment, stop and think about those things, I think we'll feel a lot more connected and a lot more in tune with our intuition.
Yeah, very true. And even it's interesting. I was thinking a couple episodes ago, I had David Suzuki on, and he said
Oh,
something I should have explored deeper, but he was talking about how us in humanity have disconnected from our indigenous ways in ways where
mm-hmm,
almost what we're talking about, where we're not listening to the energy of the earth and stuff like that. And he
mm-hmm,
kind of just threw that out there in the middle of like a different rant about like more like things like climate change or whatever. So, but again, like I guess like watching the film and stuff, it's just kind of like bringing up those themes for me, and it made me like
mm-hmm.
think again about that line he said in the interview that I didn't explore more. But again, like
Yeah.
even somebody like that who maybe you only see as like a talking head on TV too, he
Mm-hmm,
has some sort of belief or inner
mm-hmm.
truth of all this, which I have so
Yes.
much trouble explaining. It's more like you can't put a word to it. It's like an energy of the flow of
Mm-hmm.
life and nature and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's really great to hear somebody like him, who is this just so high, this highly regarded, like, educator, scientist, like incredibly intellectual person, speaking on that connectivity and leaning into that, I think is really great.
Yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, I think you leaning into it is really great too. And
Thank you.
yeah, it's just it's interesting. I hope you continue your journey. And I
Yes.
noticed you mentioned in the film you wanted to start your own coven. Have you
Mhm.
been pushing towards that or already got one or
I don't have one yet. But you know what's funny is I was talking with my friend the other day, and I think, like I said, witchcraft kind of is very different for each person. But sometimes I find that if I'm just like around like a group of friends and who are all very much connected to their intuition and everything like that, it almost feels like we're our own coven already, because of the
Mhm.
way that we communicate, and we'll have these kinds of conversations. So I feel like I've got a little bit of that, but I just need to, and like, again, it's just me being, I don't know, like an introvert, maybe, like, kind of, I have always been doing it on my own. So outside of my one friend, I haven't pushed myself. But I think that through talking to people again and people seeing the documentary, I hope that I can get a bit more confidence about doing that next step, because I think I'm still kind of like, oh, but I can't start that. Not,
Yeah.
not me,
But it seems like I don't know, even like that's kind of fitting to like your personality and stuff, but it's kind of naturally happening around you, and maybe you
Yeah,
like, because it's your own way of doing that, maybe you can make it like your own twist on whatever it is, and
yeah,
maybe there has to be some natural connection to bring it together or something like that that could
yeah.
work out for you.
It's true. It's like we talked about earlier. It's like you open yourself up to it, the world's gonna be like, okay, well, here you go. So like maybe I'll finally meet the right group of people to kind of start that kind of coven where I have like-minded people um, who will want to kind of do it in the more natural, more connected way, like that I would feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, because again, like, you can make
So
your
I'm
own
just
rules.
recruiting. I'm recruiting witches.
Yeah, let's go. I'll put it in the show notes. Just like,
Please.
witches wanted. Let's go.
Yes. Hit me up.
Oh, that's so cool. And I honestly, I feel like I could talk to you for hours about this.
Yes.
Like, it's just kind of like, I feel like you just opened like a part of me that I don't usually like talk about too.
That
I
is
know
amazing.
I know like
I love to hear
pretty
it.
yeah, pretty soon I got another interview following up,
Mm,
but
mhm.
again, maybe I'll ask you one or two more things. Just I
Absolutely.
know
I'm
there was
here.
a full moon the other day.
It
Do
was. Yeah.
you do anything around it, or like have like a
Yeah.
ritual yourself?
I do for myself. So I'm always tracking. I'm very aware of when there's a full moon and when there's a new moon. And not to describe completely my own personal ritual, but I find like for new moons are good for manifesting things. And now I have like a weird relationship with the word manifest because I feel like I don't necessarily agree with people who have a practice of like bringing things in that aren't meant for them. Like if somebody's like, I'm going to manifest a car. I mean, no judgment. Like, but if you want that car, fine, manifest it. But I feel like I'm more just trying like, I want to manifest like just things that I can control in my own body. So like I want to feel more confident about this next month, or I want to bring in some kind of like a change in my energy so that I'm more direct, or I'm more, different things like that. That's kind of what I always try and focus on when it's a new moon. And when it's a full moon, I kind of do the opposite where it's like letting go. So if there's
Mm,
something that's been bottling up at work or I'm feeling really stressed, I'll do things like maybe you write down the things that are stressing you out, and then you can like a very like I'm losing my words, sorry, but like like in that moment, meaningfully light a candle, think about how you want to release those things, burn them,
mm.
and then seeing them physically go away could kind of
Oh,
help you release them. So I definitely try and do that every full and new moon. And then there's other, I feel very connected to the moon cycles. Then you kind of have to watch for like harvest moons and like different, like blood moons when they're coming up. They definitely have their own energies as well. So it's a lot to do with astrology and their placement in the sky and things like that. I definitely focus on that a lot.
oh, that's cool. I'm learning right now. I didn't know there was like
Yeah.
different rules for the moons and stuff, it's
I mean,
it's
it's not a rule, but like those are the
yeah.
energies because when the moon is full, right after that, that's as big as it can get, and then it's not as visible anymore. So it's a good time to let go because those things that were so big and like over your head, if you
Mhm.
can let them go that night, then the next cycle of that moon is very small. It's almost like it's gone.
Ah,
And then when the cycle is coming in, like metaphorically I guess for this new moon, it's a fresh start, so it's a good time to like manifest. So if you're kind of thinking about it in that way, it the energies match with where that moon is in its cycle.
cool. That's so cool. I don't know if
Thanks.
this is a
Sorry got too deep on that one.
no, no, I'm loving
Okay.
it. I'm like, tell me more.
Okay. Okay.
We could do another hour on the moon if I
Amazing.
didn't have another guest coming soon.
Okay.
But
Well, if you ever want to talk about the moon.
yeah, yeah, I might hit you up. Actually,
Okay.
it's funny too. That made me think of I don't know if this is a reliable source, but because it was obviously something I heard like on a comedy podcast, but they were talking about moon cycles and stuff like that. But
Okay.
I
Yeah.
heard like, how like the moon like changes the tides and everything.
Yes.
And I heard
Yes.
like this is just something one of these guys heard from somebody else, but like,
Fair.
how like there's that notion of, oh, like full moon day everybody acts different and they're crazy or whatever. They said like,
Mhm.
or they were saying that like the tides, like your brain chemistry is actually doing something different that day, or I don't know if there's truth
Yeah.
to that, but it made me think about it. I'm like, yo, that's kind of cool and awesome and weird. And
Well, I mean, I haven't read that specific thing, but I think it all makes sense because if we think about how much the moon can drastically influence the large bodies of water around the world, like our bodies are made up mostly of water. So
mhm,
we'd be foolish to not think that it would then have an effect on us as well. And if the full moon has that biggest pull, then it's probably shaken up all kinds of stuff in us. And I've definitely, yeah, it's been, you do notice that on a full moon, things are a little more tense,
yeah,
I guess. It could
yeah.
have a tendency to get a little wild.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Yeah, I want to learn.
Mhm.
You're inspiring me to learn more about this shit too, because I love
Amazing.
talking about it
Amazing.
too. And then at the end of my sentence is like, oh yeah, but I don't really know. I just heard this from this person and this person. I'm like no
And that's
expert.
fine.
Yeah, I
That's
guess it's like
okay.
it's cool as part of the journey, like the first step of the journey,
Exactly.
you know? It's cool
Yes.
to not know because that just makes it more interesting. It's something else to
Yeah.
do and learn and everything. And I feel like
Right. Because you,
sometimes, yeah, like not even with this kind of stuff, if anybody's trying to start something new, sometimes they can get
mhm.
intimidated because they feel like they don't know the whole picture or they're an amateur, but sometimes all it
Yeah.
takes is that first step for everything to snowball too. And I'm sure you can attest to that with your journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally feel that because I think it was very intimidating to start out. I was like, I don't know anything, but like that's a good thing. It's good to explore and learn and it's almost very humbling. You have to be like, okay, I don't know anything about this. Let's go. Like let's start, you know.
Mhm.
And I think you have to be okay in sitting in that unknown um and being open to learning.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess for like a final question, if somebody hits me up and asks, like, I'm interested in being a witch, what advice would you give them?
What advice would I give? Well, I think I would just say there's so many different avenues you can go down. And I definitely had that experience in the documentary. And I think first of all, if somebody's looking into it, they probably already feel drawn to it through their intuition or be whatever it is. But like as they're learning, I think if they start to feel pulled in one direction, follow that whatever it is that kind of fires up for you. And don't feel like you have to go down a path that doesn't. So, if you start reading about a certain sect of witchcraft and you're like, oh, it's too, like for me, it was anything that was too structured. I just was like, I knew I had to learn about it, but I didn't feel that connection to it. And I think it's okay. You don't have to subscribe to everything under that witchcraft umbrella to be able to use it. So just, yeah, I guess it would just be trust your intuition. If you're already looking into it, you know kind of what you want. So just try and do your research and follow the path that feels right for you, not what everybody should think is.
Yeah, well said. And this has been such a fun talk.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I wish I could go another 2 hours. Like, yeah, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Yeah, thanks for being a great guest. Like I
Yes, no
mentioned, the
problem.
movie Coven, people should check it out even
Mhm.
if they're not into all this stuff, just like curious. Like it's cool and eye-opening. It's always cool to learn about like just different cultures in general too. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, and
any
there's definitely two other women in the film explore their backgrounds and their history and their cultures that are quite different from mine. And I think it's good to see that it kind of is all over the world. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's definitely lots to learn there. So if you're not necessarily into witchcraft, but you're curious, that's how I kind of started. So just follow me, in the documentary. I'm asking the same questions as the viewers probably are asking.
Yeah, yeah, that's so awesome. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Laura. Definitely keep in
No
touch. I'd
problem.
love to
Thank
have
you.
you on again
Yes,
too, because like I
I
said,
love that.
I could ask you questions forever, you know?
Yes,
Yeah, this was
I would
so
love
fun.
it. We can definitely get witchy and spooky another time.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, thanks again. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to Laura for coming on the show. Listening to that back put a big smile on my face. Also, like I mentioned in the intro, you guys can check out Coven on April 28th, the world premiere at Hot Docs in Toronto. And there's also an additional screening on May 5th, and definitely down the road. We'll let you know when this film gets released anywhere else. And on top of that, subscribe to the Rue Morgue YouTube channel for more Laura Hokstad. Her segments on there are so much fun. Speaking of people who like to have fun, I can't turn the microphone off without thanking all you legends on the Patreon page. First up, our new partner, an old friend of mine, Mike Carniello of the YouTube channel Testing with Mike. Go check it out. Amanda McKnight of Top 10 Nerd. Ryan Watkins of Ryan Radio. The wonderful Jenny Potter. Ryan frickin' Campbell. The legendary Devin McBride. My favorite soul singer, Saber. And last but not least, Francis Coffer, aka my mom. If you want to support the show and get all these episodes uncut early, right when I'm off the Zoom call, I just go there and I post them unedited. You can go to patreon.com/thecreativeimbalance. And on top of that, you get a shout out at the end of the show. And you can go to bed at night knowing that you're a badass motherfucker who supports independent, raw, uncut media, and forever have my thanks. For real. I'll take a bullet for you. But that's only another perk on the Patreon, okay? $4 a month. I'll get shot. If we're ever in that situation. But anywho, I'm going to go. We got a lot of awesome episodes coming around the corner. 3 this week. One really short one that I got to work with Lionsgate Films on. Big moves. And another one around Hot Docs. Yeah, I all got to get them out before Friday. So hope you enjoy those, and we'll catch you next time.